Hey guys, thanks so much for clicking on this video. Today's video is actually a replay of yesterday's stream where me, Sarth, Blazing Bob, and Simon Eyes all got on a call together and we had a bit of a group reaction to a video that recently came out by a community member in the classic scene who shared his thoughts on how each individual spec scales in Wrath of the Lich King. So the four of us kind of got on a call together and watched the 17-minute video and dug up about 2 hours worth of content from it. It was really fun. In case you missed it, I wanted to make sure I at least shared the VOD from that on my YouTube channel because it genuinely was very fun recording the whole thing. Please forgive any technical difficulties as a couple of us were live streaming this entire thing and we didn't really have the best game plan going into it. We just kind of YOLO'd it, and we ended up kind of sticking the landing, I think. So, without any further delay here, enjoy, guys.
All right, I fixed my thing. I fixed my thing. I'm all set on this end.
Okay, cool. We just lost
right
Bob.
then, Bob. Yeah, right as I said that, Bob literally ran away.
Okay, chat, where do you want to be? I think, chat, you guys should be on top of my face. Or maybe you'll be in
maybe
between
on my
and
face.
Sarth.
Yeah, because my face is just a little low.
Oh, I gotta decide where to put my chat.
Here's the question, though. How are we going to play the video? Like, one of you is going to need to share a screen, and then...
Oh, no, it's going to resize everything.
It is. I just thought about that, because it's going to add an extra screen in, right?
I mean, I can put it over my stream, but then it's like, your guys' faces will go away, and it'll just be my face and the video, which maybe isn't as good.
That's fine by me.
Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah, I still can see your face.
Do you want to start out with that? I can pull up the video real quick here.
Let's try it.
Okay, give me
so
just
basically,
a second.
it would just go into this spot right here, right?
I could share my screen with it too because no one can see my face, right?
Yeah, no one can see your face. I thought you were working on that and you were gonna fix it.
No, because I can see my face on my stream.
Okay. Yeah, then you just Sarth, that works better. You share it through your stream.
Let me see if this works.
And then we can just chill. I'll put the video in the chat. Let me link it for you guys. We are talking about scaling of different classes through higher item level gear. There's a video that came out recently. Oh no, now there's 5 people in the call.
But okay, so then I turn. Oh no, because okay, you're right. That's still made
And
it hard.
in this video, the author of the video basically uses actual data from Warcraft logs of players' item levels and their damage outputs, and uses this data to say, like, okay, you know, as this class increases in item level, you know, their DPS increases by generally this much, and, you know, does that for each of the classes and specs. So, like, at the surface, I love it. Like, this is a great analytical approach. Like, it's not speculation about, like, oh, I think this is going to be this or that, or I remember this being really good. So I think from the start, it's a really good premise as a way to analyze this situation. But I think what we're all here to talk about today is that there's probably some caveats here that, like, item level doesn't capture everything to do about how much damage you deal, which is going to cause some problems with this method of analysis, which is in general, in my opinion, in general, a good method, but you might have to put in some additional, like, controls and additional filters to get really good results out of it.
I completely agree with that. Like, just to start out before anything too, because that's literally like the idea. I love the idea and like the numbers and the statistical analysis behind it, and like proving like why he's saying things will scale this way. That's great. There's just obviously other factors. It's deciding that like classes scale at like a 1-to-1 on their eye level instead of how different things scale with, like, say something like armor pen being more exponential or particular trinkets. And he touches on the trinket thing, but like armor pen, like melee in general would have a different scaling as like by and large. So this one says Rogue sucks, which is hilarious.
Yeah,
Do we want to do it my screen though really fast? I want to just clear. We can do yours actually, Simon, if we want, because I didn't realize it would still make it 5 screens no matter what. So
yeah, I can pull it up.
okay, then I will.
But then your guys' faces will go away. But I guess that's probably fine.
I don't know if will they. Let me see.
I mean, the
will for
way I
his
have
end.
it set up, they will.
Oh, okay. Oh.
This works for me.
Yeah, that works for me.
Inception.
And then let me get rid of my share screen. Okay, that works for me much better also.
Okay. Okay.
How is this for everyone? Now I just need to go in.
It works for me. Simon just moved himself though, so you're gonna have to fix it on your end, Sarth.
Yeah.
Once he gets it sorted.
Yeah, I'll get this all sized up.
Okay, I think I have it how I want it now. So I'm like out of the way so the chat can see most of what's going on.
Okay, make this full.
Yeah, and I mean, like I thought his actual creation of the video was pretty good too. Like, it's just like I was just
there we go.
So turned off by the 1-to-1. I just had to like try to get you guys together to like talk about it.
Yeah, no, I agree in like every sense of the way of agreeing. I literally I didn't see your message too, and then until this morning, and I was like, oh, this sounds so awesome. Yes, let's do this.
Okay, right. So do we want to start out with just watching the video, and if any of you want to pipe in or offer a comment, we can get, I can pause it.
Just raise our hand.
Yeah, I can't see you guys, so you're gonna have to say something.
Gotcha.
Yeah, let's do it like that. Just have Bob give his little intro whatever he wants to do for intro.
Sure.
And we can jump
sure.
Into
if you
it.
want to do an intro, Bob, go ahead, and then when you're done, I can hit play.
All right. Welcome to this special edition of Warcraft Reloaded. Basically, this is going to be a talk about a recent video that was done on scaling. And although I think we all agree, we liked the effort and the intent, but we feel like there's a lot of issues with the way that he is going about looking at scaling. So we wanted to get together and just kind of do a watch party and a react, and we're doing this live on Sarth and Simonize's stream, so it's going to be interesting. But let's get into it.
Okay, we're going to start off with the video here. This is how does your class scale? Ulduar by the numbers. This is from YouTube account World of Chigur. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. That's the guy from No Country for Old Men, obviously. Very cool. Has put together a very nice video, as he says, by the numbers, how item level affects the damage output of different classes and specializations. So we're going to get right into this here.
Oh, I don't know if I could hear it. Can you guys?
We can't hear it, Simon.
Oh, no.
Oh, shit.
It's ruined.
This plan is not very good.
We were this close.
We were this close to having it set up. Yeah, I know. My stream can hear it, but it's not broadcasting to you guys. Gosh, this is difficult.
Yeah. Okay, I was gonna say if you share that as like your whole share screen, it would add a fifth into the call, but I think it would be
probably the way to do it. Yeah, let me do that. Let's see. So I've got virtual camera going over there. I think I could share window. Let me close my other browser window. Guys, we're trying. Thank you for hanging in there, Twitch chat of Sarth and of me. We're struggling through this.
This
The
time
technical
Sarth has to do the
difficulties.
Warcraft Reloaded intro.
Welcome.
Okay, share
Bobby, I think you're muted, bro.
screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as you give me just give me the whole highlight, I'll just cut it. I'll just cut it right into it.
Oh, perfect.
Oh yeah.
Perfect.
So no big deal.
Okay,
Okay, there we go. And let me.
I think
watch
we're
that
finally
and
here.
Pop it out. That's how I'm gonna do this.
There, okay. This looks kind of nice.
Sound test?
Um,
I'm nervous.
Right.
let me restart it.
Hello.
Okay.
Today
So I heard.
would like to talk to you about scaling in
Works.
Wrath of the Lich King.
Works.
The reason I wanted to make this video is because I believe that a vast majority of the community that have been playing on private servers for the past 12 years for Wrath of the Lich King don't really have a clue on which classes are good. If you looked at any of the tier lists going into phase 1.
Okay. Are we all here? Are we all on the same page? We're not even 30 seconds in.
Shade was thrown.
Shade is thrown. You have to pause it.
Yep,
I need a pause.
He even has, I think it's one of your lists up.
He
Yes.
does.
Oh, okay. It is paused.
Okay, listen. I just need to one, get this off my chest. Hell, I could have made a whole video about this before, but I may as well do it here. This seems like a good space to just say this. And this guy is not alone in the shade at all. But let me just first clarify: the tier list that you see on your screen right now is a tier list, and this is specifically zoomed in to an Ulduar prediction of Classic Wrath that I made 11 months ago, nearly an entire year ago. That's what we're looking at.
Before Classic Wrath even came out.
Before, I don't even know. Was this phase 2 of TBC?
Beta even out?
It was a
right?
long time ago.
Okay,
A
so
long time.
the video maker throwing a little bit of shade on a video from a year ago as the opening. Okay.
Okay, I have to mini rant here because to just say that private server guys don't know anything and kicking off your video with that is just so insanely small brained to me, because I feel like we and myself, guys who played private servers for years and years and shared our opinions and shared the meta that we have experienced, how is that useless or small or bad information? That doesn't make any sense. We are here to share with you all what we've seen, and ignorance of what we have seen would just mean that you're starting with no baseline. We are there to provide baseline knowledge of the expansion going into it, so we have somewhere to theorycraft from and build a meta off of. That being said, Classic and Private Server Wrath are completely different games. They just are. They cannot be compared one-to-one. There are interactions on Classic that weren't there on Private. There are interactions on Private that weren't there that are not there on Classic. They are just inherently different. And so it just seems so weird.
And you even say that all of the time in your videos, and you said it forever ago. You said, look, this is just the best info that we have, and why not give it to you and just see what happens? You know what I mean? This part of the video was definitely in bad taste, in my opinion.
It's weird that everyone wants to jump on this snapshot of the video, this tier list. Everyone is looking at a couple things, and the big one is ferals, because
everyone's looking at feral
shill. They think oh my god, Rugs was so wrong. LOL, saying feral is S tier. It's it's not that I was right or wrong. The games are inherently different products, and if you go play on a private server right now to this very fucking day, good feral players are going to be doing S tier damage.
Yep.
It is still like that. And that was not like opinions or information based on like feral copium. That is just like factual evidence based on like Wrath private server interactions that we are
Mm-hmm.
like used to. That's a meta that built up over years of consistent like feral pumpage. On top of the fact that like on private servers, we don't have shit for logs. When we have logs, they're terrible, they're hard to read, and half the time they
Yeah.
get broken before they actually upload. And Hysteria isn't getting like taken off of it. Like Hysteria
Oh,
is
very
always
Which
going to
obviously
be
went to the
applied.
feral.
Yeah,
Oh,
which
so
obviously is
checked.
on your feral, which is adding like somewhere between 60k to like 100k extra damage done on any given boss fight or whatever it is. Like it's ridiculous. So all that to be said, like consider for a second the fact that like private server players never really had like a whole lot of theory crafters. We were like missing just the sheer number of players like playing the
Right.
game and
Mm-hmm.
breaking it and bending it over backwards and
Mhm.
making it their bitch. Seriously, like a guy
Yeah.
like White Wolf rose up in the private server scene very late in the game. Where we're looking at this
Mhm.
tier list, like I made that video and this tier list well before Dual Wield Unholy was even in its infancy and theory crafted.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
we were so far behind in our like evolution of this game that to hold it to the same standard and to say like, oh, Rugs is wrong or private server guys are wrong, it's like it doesn't make sense and it's very small brained.
I agree with that. It's like a lot of when, like you said, you had a smaller community on private servers, and when you take like the theory crafting that comes out of that is just generally not going to be as refined as when you take and you apply the like entire classic WoW player base to
Which is
a
massive.
similar game.
Yeah.
Like you just have so many more people interacting with the game, trying new things, pushing it to its limit, bending it over backwards, as you said, is a good way
Mhm.
to put it. And also, like, there's a handful of interactions that are just different. Like in classic World of
Unholy.
Warcraft, we had mutilate, main hand attack, giving 2 chances to trigger poisons. And it's like it didn't do that on the private servers, and that has pretty big implications for how you gear a mutilate rogue. And I think Omen of Clarity works differently on private servers that almost certainly would bump feral druids up. I'm not as familiar about that, but like it's going to
Yeah,
be these
it
like
did.
small interactions, like you said, different game. So
Yeah.
it's like private server information is like a good, in my view, is a good starting point, but you got to like reanalyze it through like what's going on in classic World of Warcraft.
When I first started my YouTube channel, this video that we're looking at here, the tier list for every phase of Wrath,
Yeah.
that one kind of blew up. But I had another video that kind of like went semi-viral that like kind of built my channel about a year ago. And in that video, it was like a rant because I guess I'm known for ranting. Is a prep for classic Wrath, and it's just me taking 15 minutes to say everything that you receive between now and the classic release, you have to take with a grain of salt. And so anyone who's out there saying like, "Oh, I'm backpedaling," like, no, like I'm not backpedaling. You weren't receiving the information that I was putting out or anyone was putting out with enough salt. Like you had the wrong perspective on what we were approaching this game with.
Yeah, and you've
Yeah.
said it over and over on my podcast, on Classic Live, on your channel, like all over the place. You even were on with Hamster Wheel the other day. Like, and you said it every time over and over, and you know, people just don't want to listen.
Yeah. But I think that's like innate, right? In a tier list or anything, right? Someone will always look at it. And like this one, I mean, did really well, obviously. So like someone will look at that and it's hard for them to even think about listening to the points you make about it. They always, for some reason, no matter what, 80% of the comments are like, I can't believe you're so dumb. Why would you ever put that there? And like, even if you go and explain it 6 times in the tier list, like 6 times, you can literally be like, you could have said in this video 6 separate times, I'm putting feral here because with Hysteria, it's really high. And with the interactions of Omen of Clarity on the private servers, which we don't know if it'll be as good as it will be on the live realms. Right now on private servers from that data, feral is absolutely in S tier. And then like literally as what we have now, right? Like you could easily go back and be like, well, obviously Feral kind of is not really doing that well. And like, but people will see that and be like, this fucking guy, dude, this guy's a shill for Ferals forever. He was, because when we did the tier list on like during the beta, the actual beta, right, we did a tier list together, and you like said Feral was doing really well, and I was like, I don't think there's enough data because you're the only Feral I've seen, and like I don't think other people are playing well yet too, so like I don't think there's enough data yet. And like you agreed to be like, yeah, let's put it in like not enough data. We don't know how it's going to perform, right? Like it's not like you're like set in stone for thinking it's going to be the best, right? You're like, and the same thing with anything on this list. It's like the information's so old now, and it was the stepping stone, right? It was how things were played on the private servers. Now, obviously, things change massively when you go to live realms, and we have a massive player pool, and every class has theory crafters that go nuts, right? Like if the private servers had like Simon eyes on their rogues would be like destroying, right? So
Yeah,
it's very different.
Everything in the world weaving now. So like just think of all the weird stuff that so many people have come up with, and it's really neat. That's something that I talked about prior to a Wrath. I was like, I can't wait to see how all the big brains break stuff, because I knew it was going to happen, and it's been great. But
who would have guessed that crafted Titan Steel Spellblade is better than Havoc's Call Blade of Lordaeron Kings when you're casting Fan of Knives?
Yeah,
you know?
Heroic Lich King, right? You're like, who would have thought that was literally the best item in the game, and we could get it now?
Oh man.
Okay, so we've covered the idea that like maybe using reference material from a year ago is not the most concrete a source. We want to. My chat's getting mad at me now for pausing for too long, but I told them we're professional streamers. This is a 17-minute video. We're gonna milk at least 90 minutes of content out of it. All right, let's get back to it.
Yeah, let's watch it.
Based on the thousands of logs that we currently have for next rooms. So on screen right now, you can see that using Warcraft logs, you can select the all item level scaling option to see how well classes are scaling, and to more accurately math out future predictions with this data. I chose item levels between 200 and 213 because this is where most people sit at when it comes to gear, versus the maybe few dozen people that have item levels of 217. So let's get to the math. First, I'll show you what is currently the best specs. So currently in green, I have highlighted roughly the top 5 best specs, and this is solely based on fairly short fights, which is using patchwork, and thus pure single target. The reason I chose patchwork is because I believe it represents the easiest way to math out scaling in the future, instead of trying to account for movement during the fight. And after you get past the top 5 best specs that are currently performing, when you look at maximum DPS between the 200 and 213 eye level, you get to the medium specs in yellow and the bad specs in red. So what I did here is I took the maximum amount of DPS in between these 13 eye level brackets, and I took the minimum, and then I took the difference between these, and this is the amount of scaling that is happening, and then I put this into a percentage, which is in the 5th column, and this represents how well these classes are scaling, given the thousands of data points that we currently have. Now, if you sort scaling instead of DPS, you can currently see that
I do want to say
Marksman
something real
Hunters,
quick,
Feral
though.
Druids, and
Yeah,
Okay,
go ahead. I got the pause.
Right, I just wanted to look up really quick, and he says he took it from patchwork. Maybe it was like 2 weeks ago or something, but like he was off. Like, I mean, he had Combat Rogue way down, and Combat Rogue currently sits at number 6 for patchwork.
For
so
99?
I don't know.
Yeah, what
He had it
percentile?
sorted
Sorted
like
by
this.
by 99.
Oh, hold
Parsing?
on. He's looking at 99th.
Yeah,
Yeah.
99th percentile.
Okay, there's still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, I guess they're like ninth. But why? Yeah, okay. All right, okay. I get it.
Alondo
He's
pointed
trying to
out
take the best players.
that rogues, a lot of them are using 2-piece slayers
Yeah,
for eye level.
I got some words about that.
Okay,
Um,
yeah.
so basically, like he's working in a bracket of about 13 item levels, and he's seeing how much the DPS goes up by. You can take, your 2-piece slayers. These are item level 154 pieces, and upgrade them to item level 213 pieces from Naxxramas. And we know from the spreadsheets and simulation tools, they all agree that when you upgrade 2-piece slayer to 2x, Naxxramas 25 man, item level 213 items, it's barely a difference. It's essentially a wash. It's just like the most minuscule of upgrade. So when you upgrade just those 2 item slots from 154 to 213, you raise your average item level by 6.5. Literally half of the like window he's looking at, a plus 13 average item level. So when you have people at like 213 average item level and people at 200 item level that are both using and not using the Slayers set, you have a problem with your data, because you have people of significantly different item level dealing essentially the same damage output. So it kind of, the premise of this method of analysis is that as you raise item level, you raise player damage output.
Yeah.
And like specifically with rogues, and I'm sure this occurs to some extent with other classes, you have a very egregious example of very low eye level items providing like outperforming their item level, which the effect of this is going to be exactly what you see here, that like it tells you that, oh, rogues don't scale very well. And
It
the
hits
way
rogues the most too.
Yeah, and it's like not even close.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically deleting half their scaling, because this item level difference that is like 6.5 item level is about half that range to make no DPS difference. Like, just like half your, it's fucked. The way you would have to, the way you'd have to control the data to do this properly is you would have to look at only rogues that use 2-piece slayer set and do that comparison, or look at only rogues that don't use slayer set and do that comparison. You have to separate them. And there's a handful of other items for rogues that like upgrading the item level doesn't increase your damage output, or does it very little. Like Librarian's Paper Cutter is a eye level 200 weapon that is just like, there's one weapon in the game that's better than it. So like you're going to have people like in Naxxramas being like, well, this item's epic, so I'm going to equip it. And then they're going to raise their item level and do less damage. Or like equipping your Fury of the 5 Flights or your Grim Toll eye level 213 trinkets instead of
For
your
no
eye
point.
level,
Yeah.
eye level like 200 Mirror of Truth or eye level 200 Greatness card is like a wash or slightly worse. So like you have another example of raising the item level but not really meaningfully impacting the damage. So that kind of scuffs this whole method of analysis.
Yeah, and I think because earlier, right before we like reformed and got this all working, you were talking about like the idea behind this analysis is really like it's nice. It's nice to go through and like look at the actual numbers and how things are scaling. So it's in the similar vein of like him talking about the old data from private servers, right? Like it can be used as like kind of an indication, but there's a lot more that goes on, and I know we'll get into that, especially when we talk about anything like any of the stats that scale really well. Obviously, with something like armor penetration, crit is already scaling pretty well for fire mages, but that just like goes crazy. Fire mages also have been confirmed that they have to deal with ignite munching forever, which is going to hurt them in ICC significantly, right? The more they crit, now you're losing damage. So like things like that all need to be taken into account. And of course, obviously there's like trinkets or items that are way lower eye level that are just so good. So like just focusing on eye level is like, it's a reference point. It's a reference point.
Mhm.
That's,
Yep.
yeah, that's all. We can
Alright,
see
we
what he
good? Back
says
to
next.
video?
I'm good.
Alright, unpausing chat.
Fire mages, survival hunters, arcane mages, they're pretty much scaling at about the same, at the 26.5% mark. So it appears that there is a decent amount of classes that are scaling fairly equally, with marksman hunters being the outlier. And then if you go down the list, you can see that there are some medium scale.
Wait, hang on. I paused it again. This is, I don't know about marksman hunter, but that's
I
like
do.
really impressive. You know,
Marksman
is
Hunter.
something weird going on there?
You know what's interesting? So Marksman Hunter has been found out now. So from the private servers, it was you go Marksman when you hit a certain armor pen cap, and that's actually not true. It's actually you switch to Marksman and it outperforms survival when you hit a certain like weapon damage. So when you get a better
Okay.
weapon. So in Ulduar is when we'll swap to Marksman actually because it's weapon damage scaling, and
So, like-
and also a lot of this is interesting because hunters are all just getting better at trap weaving, and they should be trap weaving, but I would probably wager 90% of hunters aren't trap weaving. So like the highest percentage, if we ever look at anything that's not like the 99th percentage, are all going to be a lot lower than what the 99th percentage, especially for marksmen or unholy and anything like that, right? Because they are playing the class the correct way, but it's not a widely known play style, and also it's like more effort. And I've heard from people that they're like, I don't want to move my character, but yeah.
Yep. Probably the majority of people.
Yeah. So I think marksman scale really well, because they like, yeah, weapon damage is what's gonna be good.
Okay, back to video. Oh,
I want to
sorry,
speak
guys.
to
Go ahead.
Feral, since we are already looking at like those top ones there. I think Feral is interesting to at least touch on, because I think this humongous like differential gap here is just another testament to how like skill oriented Feral is. For an example, like I can't remember who it was, maybe it was Sarth who did a video on it about the difficulty in classes and how that plays out, and like how you can statistically see the skill ceiling of certain classes. And Feral is like the number one. It is the hardest class to play, and the more that you get better at it, the more damage you will do. And I think like Feral is so weird to look at these little snapshots because in early eye levels, they're missing a shit ton of hit, like a ridiculous amount of hit, where you're like gymming for hit if you just want to like get good hit rating out. And then when you get more eye level, like you can just do like better base damage, but a lower geared Feral who's like really good at it will actually be able to do more damage than a really geared Feral, because the class has such a humongous skill window. So that one seems really weird. And if we're basing it like anything off of that at all, like the two next classes, Enhanced and Unholy, are another like really high skill ceiling classes. I feel like it kind of also sort of plays into that, where if you play an Unholy at a really high level versus a guy who isn't very good at Unholy, or who's doing two-hand Unholy with high eye level, you're going to out DPS his ass. And that's just going to look different, even though you are both 99 parsing on Patchwork.
Yep.
All right, sweet. We're 2 minutes 45 seconds into the video.
Classes,
Good work
which
so far,
are
guys.
Surprisingly, warriors, which should be scaling more so than this, given that warriors in general scaled the best out of the expansions. And then you go to the worst performing scaling classes in your Shadow Priest, Frost Death Knight, and Rogue specs, with rogues being way worse than anything else. And then given this scaling difference, you could add the 13 eye levels that this percentage represents onto the 213. So add this percentage onto a 213 and you get 226, which will roughly be the 10-man eye level for Ulduar, since they're changing the item levels. And thus, if you sort by eye level for 10-man Ulduar, you can see that there is some differences in best specs. So as you can see, Assassination Rogues, since they scale terribly, they went from a good spec in green all the way to below 50 percentile in the rankings. So you can see, due to the scaling percentage, Frost Death Knights, Assassination Rogues, and Combat Rogues are now middle of the pack and or very poor specs, where you can see Marksman Hunters now are middle of the road because of their excellent scaling. Now you can further show this by sorting by the 239 eye level by adding the percentages onto them again for a more extreme example. And this is now putting Marksman Hunter 4th, whereas previously it was bottom of the list. And you can see that rogues are literally at the bottom of the list now, just because they scale supposedly a third of the amount. Now you may be surprised by
At least
the
you said supposedly.
extremely low scaling of rogues, and I wanted to try to determine if this was somewhat true. So instead of going from 200 eye level to 213, I did all item levels that had at least 100 parses, and then I did it between the eye levels of 216 and 191. So this is basically every single rogue that has, or assassination rogue that has rated in the past 2 weeks is in this mathematical calculation. So
Okay, we're pausing here. This is not the way to manipulate the data to address the problem of Slayer's set, 154 eye level, like outperforming its eye level. Like, just taking a wider range of data isn't the way to account for that, because you have people using and not using Slayers throughout that whole eye level range. Like I said before, the way to address that properly is to separate all the rogues using Slayers from all the rogues not using Slayers. That's the way to account for that. And like when you look at the chart he had at the start of like rogue scaling, and it literally goes down at some point when you increase item level, that like should be a red flag that the premise of like increasing item level increases damage output. That should be a very clear red flag that something's going wrong here and you're not going to get a good result.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
the maximum DPS at 216 eye level was around 8200, and the worst was eye level 191 at 6500. So if you were to do the same math, you get 881 DPS for a 13 eye level difference, and then same thing with marksman, just as a comparison. So maybe the 200 to 213 is an extreme example, but I believe that it's the most accurate example, since 200 eye levels are all the Naxxramas gear, pretty much, and 213 is all the 25-man Naxxramas gear. Whereas once you get into these lower eye levels at the 190s, you're basically having questing blues and stuff like that. And the jump from questing blues to epics is a big advantage for some classes, and obviously should encompass the scaling. But what this boils down to is assassination is, even if counting these numbers, is extremely bad at scaling. Very, very, very bad. And marksman is still good. So even if you compare just these two numbers, marksman is scaling 60% better than assassination. So after looking at all these numbers, we'll look at some graphs to better see what I'm talking about. So
Look at how
here's
much the
graph
rogue
of all the
dips, too.
specs. As you can see,
It's a
all of
huge
them
dip.
are going pretty linearly up.
Dude,
as you can see
it's
with
big
these
dumbs
warrior
unequipping
specs
their
at the
paper
bottom,
cutters
which is most clearly
and
defined,
like
since there's
dealing
not
less
overlapping
damage. I mean, I
lines.
guess.
But you can see
There's-
there are
Literally doing less
outliers of
damage
weird
with
things
higher
happening.
eye level.
So
Literally.
obviously, rogues are starting at the very top at the beginning, and they're pretty stagnant throughout the whole entire thing. This is how we're getting the 10%, only 10% scaling over these 13 eye levels. And you can also see that frost DKs are doing kind of bad, which is another bad scaler. So it's this line. It's starting off at near the top, and
Frost
it's
DKs definitely
landing
scale, too.
near the middle at the end. Next graph, you can see the 4 worst performing scaling specs. And this is, again, the double rogue, the frost DK, and also shadow priest isn't scaling very well, although it is a pretty linear scaling compared to the others. The next graph, you can see that these are the good scalers between the 200 and 213 eye level. So Unholy DK, Affliction Warlock, Elemental specs, Mage specs, Hunter specs, and Feral Druid. These were all in the 25% plus scaling brackets, and you can see these are pretty linear, and you would think that given another 13 eye levels, they're again going to scale linearly, just like these. And this is the graph that I was talking about when I incorporated all the item levels. So in the first half of this bracket, I did not use this data because all this data did not have at least 100 parses to determine these numbers. So for example, potentially there was only a single assassination rogue that rated Naxxramas in the past 2 weeks at 180. So I didn't use that because it's not accurate information. I held it to at least 100 parses. So I used 191. So I used the scaling from this point all the way to the top for rogues, and it's still a 10% difference, which from the line you can see that it kind of looks like they're scaling decently, but if you compare it to the good scaling specs of Feral and Marksman, you can see that rogues are starting at roughly 6,500 DPS at the 190 mark, and Feral and Marksman are at the 5,500. So while they're starting off 1,000 DPS lower at the very low gear marks, you can see that they're closing the gap extremely well, especially Marksman at the 215, 216. They're almost caught assassination rogues. So maybe this is like a 300 DPS difference, but they started off at 1,000 DPS difference. So that scaling is insane comparatively. So the next chart, this is what the current standings are.
We're getting
As
to the good
assassination rogue is at the top, combat rogue is at the top, but in the upcoming graphs, this will drastically change.
Unholy
So
DK,
this
Unholy
is using
DK.
my numbers for the 200.
This is where it gets
213
interesting.
eye
Pause.
level,
Okay,
and
Yeah.
then
226
doubling it,
eye
going
level.
up to the 226 eye level. As you can see, rogues went from
So-
the very top to the very bottom, and even though warrior.
So what we're doing here is he's taking the percentage difference that each class gained from going from 200 to 213, and then, you know, extrapolating that, saying, you know, you take your eye level 213 DPS and you apply that percentage gain to then generate this chart, 226. So that's assuming, you know, linear scaling with item level is essentially, which, you
It's
know,
so much
this
more
whole stream is
complicated.
about like, it's an okay way to do things, but there's going to be a lot of caveats. I feel like we were doing good at the start. I mean, we were really doing good at the start. I mean, we had like 30 minutes of content from 2 minutes 54 of the video. We're 9:18 into the video right now. We need a couple more pause requests, you guys.
I'm waiting for the moment when he puts up the
from scaling,
239 eye
now
level.
hunters
This is
are
good
middle of
enough
the pack,
though.
Okay,
even though
okay.
Marksman is scaling the best, and same thing with Feral. They're going from
I'm hearing
the
it.
bottom-ish to the middle, given this 13 eye level difference. And Warlocks are still good. Unholy is still scaling very well, and Shamans are scaling well. And then taken to the extreme, if you look at the 239, which is a doubling of the
Pause.
scaling that I previously showed, you can
Pause
see
it.
even
Because
Elemental Shaman, look how good.
What he's about to commit to is he's about to say that good guilds won't take rogues in Ulduar. He's about to say that based on his findings and based on this chart.
Well,
there
look
is
how low
no
rogue is. Look how
way.
low combat rogue and assassination. They obviously don't scale, and I don't think you would. Shadow Priest is down there too. Fury Warriors in shambles, right? In
There's
shambles.
no world where rogue will do less than a ret paladin in Ulduar.
Oh no,
world.
you don't see the graph, obviously. Okay.
Okay, bro,
I just gotta
okay.
pause. Rugs
I've made a
needs
grave
glasses,
error.
guys.
I've made a grave error in disrespecting any of my warrior brothers at the bottom of the meter. I realize that I'm now going to be down there with them, you know,
Yeah.
Ulduar, and I have to make good friends with them now.
Yeah, now you're all there together, okay?
Okay,
You have to.
I will touch on, since we are looking at a snapshot of what he's saying 239 eye level will look like.
Okay.
A couple set bonuses that I know of in particular that will help this, that he admittedly knows isn't being accounted for in this video, which is okay. I'm glad he admits that. But some things that we'd be looking for like power spikes in Ulduar is, I know Enhanced Shaman is a great 4-piece. Fire Mage, a phenomenal 4-piece, on top of the fact that they have no longer as many hit issues, plus they're getting a good amount of crit and haste. Feral gets a phenomenal 2-piece set bonus. Shadow Priest gets a ridiculous set bonus in Ulduar. It's super, super good for Shadow Priests in Ulduar, which is great because Shadow Priests are down bad. Paladins, if anything, all they have is this eye level increase because they probably actually get worse in Ulduar than they are currently in Nax, considering that there's no undead mobs in Ulduar for them to, take advantage of with Sense Undead and all the things that, increase their damage to undead targets.
Yeah.
So there is a lot that is just not being accounted for here in this snapshot that I just want to point out from my own knowledge of what is strong in Ulduar.
Okay, but first of all, so you're saying Ret Paladin's not better than Rogue. I'll accept that barely. Fine. Okay. But what are the, so you're saying, wait, do you think that Enhanced Shaman, if we were to look at this like now and like kind of revise this, what are the ones that stand out the most as like, without looking at their actual DPS numbers, other than Rogue, because the Rogue one blows my mind. What are the ones that stand out the most to you guys? Like Rogues from your experience, and then Simon from looking at the numbers that have been broken down so far, right?
Right. So in my experience and in my like recommendation, like say we were talking about like a loot council thing, where would I prio tier to because I want to give people these power spikes as soon as I possibly can? It would be a fire mage, it would be 2-piece for feral druid, it would be 4-piece for enhance, it would be shadow priest. Hell, I'd even throw disc priest in there, but that's not really in the conversation on a damage conversation. So enhance, yeah, it's gonna go up. Fire mage gonna go way up, but that's also weird because fire/arcane, it depends on the fight. On a pure single target fight, hell, arcane still might win out. And even then, we don't actually even know what the value of the 251 eye level gear will be. There is a world we don't know yet that fire mages don't actually even use their set bonus, despite how godly it is. It might be a loss because of the eye level loss instead of just using pure off pieces that are 251 off pieces because of how valuable that is. So it's really tough to say. I also know Frosty K gets a really solid 2-piece here. And that's about all I know for set bonuses.
Yeah, Simon, do you know? I don't know if you've looked ahead at like the numbers of where rogues are like with like current gear in Ulduar or whatever before the eye level buffs, but like, oh, perfect, you have it.
Yeah.
Is
Oh,
this?
did I show? Yeah. Okay. Here, I can put it on screen. Duh. Let's look at. I don't know. Mutilate. We'll just update these to the current sheet. 1 second. I get like a percentage here. We're going from, according to the spreadsheet, about 11,000. This actually counts your tricks damage in here, so that's like not your personal parse, but your total contribution. 11,000 to 12,987. So that's 12,987 over. I mean, I just had Excel open, and then I opened the calculator to do it. I could have, about a 17% increase. Going from full bis one phase to full bis next phase, but that's before the item level buffs.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of a spreadsheet. It's a little weird. That might not be super precise,
Yeah. So still, like that's because he had scaling at what was it like 13%. So even just there, right? And that's before getting an eye level, like an actual eye level buff, right? So that's large. Actually rogues get a lot less than from like things like armor penetration now, right? Because of a lot of magic damage. So
yeah, so like assassination rogues, as far as I'm aware, like never really want to have armor pen. You're going to have armor pen on a handful of items. It's going to help your damage a little bit, but you deal so much elemental damage, nature damage in particular, that's unaffected by armor penetration, that it just makes armor penetration just like not a super desirable stat. Combat rogues do a higher proportion of their damage as damage that benefits from armor penetration. So eventually, like, armor penetration is a stat that like increases your damage output by a percentage. And when you take armor penetration, you always take it instead of other stats.
Mhm.
So what essentially you want to be dealing enough damage already that it's worth trading stats like attack power that give you a flat increase to your damage output for other stats that give you a percentage. You need to be doing enough damage already that percentage gain becomes bigger than the flat gain you could get from other stats.
Yep. So but armor penetration, because of the percentage gain, right, doesn't apply in the sense of looking at an eye level scaling, right? Like if you were to try to look at something like an eye level 1-to-1 scaling, it doesn't apply like at all in that sense, right?
Yeah, it's really hard to look at, right?
It kind of does and it kind of doesn't, because like the same thing happens with like critical strike and hit chance. Like the more attack power you have, the more valuable each point of critical strike is, or the more valuable it is to turn a miss into a hit. But armor penetration in particular, it like has non-linear scaling. As you approach the armor penetration cap, you're getting more damage per point of armor penetration. Or more percentage increase per point of armor penetration. It's not a huge effect, but it is it's a fairly minor effect of like the damage gain per point is higher when you're closer to that cap.
Yeah. Do you think Warriors are going to scale this poorly? I'm curious.
I don't think they're going to scale that poorly, but it's like, I mean, the main line from a lot of Warriors is, oh, Warrior is a very good scaling class. And like, we understand that. We've seen that in Classic. We've seen that in TBC. Right now, they don't just need to be a good scaling class. They need to be an insane scaling class, because they don't just need to scale insane. They need to scale insanely better than all the other classes scale to make up the massive gulf between Warrior damage output and other class damage output, right? For them to be competitive, they don't just have to be insanely good scalers. They have to be insanely better scalers than everyone else to make up that gap.
Yeah.
So I say, like, I don't know. I'll believe it when I see it, is, you know, how I usually put it.
I'll take that. You're on cleat fights.
Video, back to video.
Yeah.
Or the differences.
Go for it.
So again, rogues and warriors and ret paladins, I believe is going to be very, very sad news for Ulduar. And on top of this, these specs are typically brought for the trash damage, but Ulduar really doesn't have that much trash. Like an assassination rogue, even if they're the best at AoE damage, are they going to be taken if they're actually 4,000 DPS behind the top specs?
Wait,
4,000, get wrecked. Why is assassination brought for trash damage and paladin, right?
I think he meant to
Rugs,
say.
I want to ask you about that, because you're more familiar with Ulduar. I'm like, I did that when I was like 15 or something, a long time ago.
Sure.
No, I was older than that, but I don't really remember the layout of Ulduar. Is it really like, I mean, certainly compared to Nax, it's less trash. Nax is just fucking full of trash. How do you feel like the boss to trash balance is in Ulduar?
It's a lot better. I mean, Nax Ramus is a 25-man heroic dungeon.
Now,
Ulduar is a...
When you say better, you know, my interpretation of better would be there's a lot more oh, shit.
Not the hats! Not the hats!
My interpretation of better would be there's a lot more spider wings. Can you be a little bit more clear?
Yeah.
To say that there isn't any trash would be a lie, because there is 100% trash. There's a lot of trash in Ulduar. That adds to the fact that like it's a super fucking long raid. Really, really long. Freya's room alone, it takes a long time to clear that unless you're able to like one pull it or pull the boss without full clearing it. There is a lot of trash. There is going to be time for you to spec swap if you wanted to like gas out some more overall. But to me, like,
I think we'll
never has been and never will
room.
be a big overall damage raid.
Can't you on servers Blizz-like realms already, like if you were to like pull Freya, doesn't it aggro the whole room?
It depends on the server.
Okay.
100% dependent on the server.
I feel like that's where a rogue is going to have so much fun.
We were testing like pulling Patchwork and just having it pull the whole room, and like that was awesome.
You were crushing.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, so back in the day, it did pull all of the trash, and
I thought so too.
I don't, I mean, it was a long time ago, and I don't remember it perfectly, but I do remember having to do trash over and over. Like, so, like, yeah, like there is still plenty of trash, and Nax, like, there's actually way less trash in Nax now than there was in the vanilla version too, like of classic, you know. So
Requirements. It's
So
now
I
we
think the
finally can AoE. Now we can finally AoE in Nax, and we couldn't AoE in Classic. You were capped at 4 targets, right? Like, because it was rogues or warriors, right? So like you're pretty much capped at 4. Mostly you kind of like 2 to 3. So you didn't pull as massive unless it was something where every single person in the entire raid used sappers. Rogues limited in your AoE exactly 2 minutes, no matter what. Every 2 minutes you can do damage to 2 targets. That's it. Rogues were like, you had to plan out your blade flurries. Now we finally, every class has AoE, and I think that's why we see Nax seem like it has a lot more trash, but I think it's just because we pull really, really big. And I think that's great. I think it's way more fun.
I also thought it was interesting how he said you bring us assassination rogues for trash, and I'm sitting there thinking,
And he said Rep
they
Paladin.
also do like one of the highest single target damage at the moment as well. So
Well, Bobby,
what are
I
you
think
talking about?
what he's talking about is like if the speculation, if his like analysis of item level scaling is correct, and like the single target meters look like he says they will, then yeah, you wouldn't be bringing assassination rogues for.
Yeah,
If they're
I just
actually down where he says they will be, then yeah, you wouldn't be doing that. I
but
think
didn't
that
he
advice is
just
based
say
on that premise.
yeah, but didn't he just say right now you bring assassination rogues for trash? I thought that's maybe
Right.
I
Let's check.
misheard.
He did say that. He did say
say
that.
And
he
I
said
think like
Rep Paladin.
That, I believe,
Hang
is
on.
going to be very, very sad news for Ulduar. And on top of this, these specs are typically brought for the trash damage, but Ulduar really doesn't have that much trash. Like an assassination rogue, even if they're the best at AoE damage, are they going to be taken if they're actually 4,000 DPS behind the top specs?
Okay,
I guess
okay,
he said
probably not.
pause.
he said
At least
yeah, he said typically, I guess. Okay.
So the take is obviously insanely cooked, but I also think just the perspective is weird. To take these classes for trash damage is just, I find that personally weird. And if a class is good at trash damage, that means they're good at it for a reason, and that reason is typically probably outside of like the insane shit that rogues do, is typically because they're good at cleave. And there's a lot of cleave in Ulduar. We can't just
Like a
base
lot,
all of our,
right?
yeah, we can't just base like all of our assumptions on what's going to be the meta for guilds to run for DPS fully on 2-minute patchwork, 200 to 213 eye level scaling. Like,
Absolutely.
and that's all that we're looking at here, which is just very insane. There's a lot of cleave. Hell, Freya, Firefighter, Kolagarn, Iron Council. Iron Council doesn't really count. Algalon, Yogg.
Iron Council
fucking
counts because we're gonna
everything,
stack
dude.
everything.
That's not gonna count on logs. You know that they're not gonna count that.
They're gonna let us do it. Let us have fun.
No.
Warcraft vlogs. Let me pump.
Wait, Sark, you got to explain this a little more. Iron Council is like 2 dwarfs and like 1 really tall guy, right?
A
And you fight them
giant,
all at
like
once?
yeah, this huge guy, and like
So why
he
wouldn't
summons.
they let us stack it?
He summons like this, like you'll get this like circle on the ground, and you can stand in it and you can pump, right? So like with what Rugs is saying, it makes sense that like Blizzard or Warcraft vlogs a lot of times will only count whichever, like they'll only count the damage from whatever like boss dies first and then into the next one,
right.
not if you cleave them down. And so Iron
Just like
Council,
on,
you'll have that sort
like
of
on Eridar Twins.
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you damage the other one, it doesn't count until the first one's dead. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So that's probably actually what they're gonna do, but I think it would be
Wow,
fun.
lame.
I like to have AoE is pretty fun, you know.
Well, you can still do it for fun.
For your own cheese, no.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean,
Blaze
that's
Bobby,
what,
I don't think you might be a different kind of player where like if it doesn't count on the logs, it's not fun, okay? It's illegal to have fun if it doesn't count on the logs.
yeah,
Yeah.
I am definitely in a whole smaller league than you.
I'm just
I am
messing with
sweaty
you. I'm
casual.
messing with you.
Yeah.
I'm messing with
Sweaty
you. It's okay.
casual.
Okay, so this perspective that we're looking at here is strictly
Mhm.
like 200 to 213 eye level patchwork phase one,
Right.
which is weird. I'm
Yeah.
curious, what do you guys think? Like, what is the fight in Ulduar to make an evaluation like this? Because every single fight has its own little nuance in Ulduar that you aren't gonna have the quote unquote patchwork. Like hell, XT is
Right.
extremely long, and we've
Mm-hmm.
seen like boss kill length like have a massive effect on where
Mm-hmm.
classes end up in the meters. It's really long. Plus, it has like the damage increase window with a late lust. It's a weird one. Ignis. You would
Right.
think another great patchwork fight. However, people get picked up into the pot, which also like loses their uptime but gives them a haste buff. I think
Nah, that
Algalon's
person is out.
that person's out, but they also get a haste buff. So it's weird, you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Algalon is a really good patchwork one, but that's got a lot of
Dude, you're
things
good.
moving, and like some people will need to have an assignment to damage stars and things like that. Like there's
You're
a
you're gonna
lot.
get RNG unholy Death Knight parses where they wipe the raid if they don't get the first pickup into pot for their gargoyle snapshot. Right?
That's-
Am I putting these pieces together right?
Maybe. How early is that ability, right? And how much haste?
God.
Because that's hilarious. Because
I
then
don't
you could
know.
you could swap all of your procking things, right? You swap your trinkets, swap out your cloak if you're doing cloak for that. And then like literally like make sure those don't proc for 30 seconds into the fight. If you get picked up at 20 seconds in, then you get dropped, you have a haste buff, and then you're the guy. It's like, I'm getting the 100. It's me. Let's go, guys. All right, bloodlust now.
Wonderful. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not super familiar with a lot of the fights, so I'm yielding to your guys' knowledge, but I'm pretty sure they like don't make that many patchwork-esque,
Right.
stand-in
Well,
DPS fights.
Right. And so
okay,
then
but you
what
got
you
to
would
give him a pass though, right? Because
Hmm.
everybody tries to use the patchwork, model for every type of sim that you ever use. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but it's really not a great, like, it's just back in the day, like they were like, okay, well, this is one that we could just see straight up damage, but it's so much more complicated than that with mechanics. And I mean, yeah, he probably would have served himself way better if he would have looked at every fight in Nax and used all of those boss fights together. Might have had a better picture, possibly.
Hmm.
That would have been really hard, but yeah, would have
Yeah.
gotten better results. I think that in Ulduar, we will, as a community, when it comes to like, the dick measure contest, we're gonna log on to Warcraft logs. We're gonna click on raids. We're gonna go to Ulduar. And we're gonna go to all bosses.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, I think all bosses is gonna be where we're actually like measuring ourselves up to the competition because there isn't
Yeah.
like a patchwork fight,
Until
or
China
it's gonna
takes
be
over.
like, or it's gonna be like Algalon because it's a pretty consistent, reliable, roughly 3-minute fight. Great measurement for everyone there. I think Algalon and like all bosses, but then all bosses gets fucked because you have casters who get ridiculous gains from Hodir and Vezax, which will just
Hmm.
skyrocket them. And so it's so weird to just look at like encounter damage or boss damage
Hmm.
and try to measure up. It's gonna be weird.
And kill times on different bosses are also crazy. Like you'll see rogues jump like straight up now because we're killing Heigen without moving. Like we aren't dancing. We're just standing there pumping, and it's almost like a patchwork if he
Hmm.
doesn't warp up. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yep.
Yeah, I like that, but on Heigen, apparently, it's impossible for any healer or person with a dispel to target pets because it's like
True. Your gargoyle dies a lot, is
it's
what I'm
so
hearing.
dumb. And they dispel like one. Literally today, it's like one person will do like 14k DPS, and then everyone else is like at like 6,000. You know why? Because you didn't dispel our gargoyle. It does all of our damage.
Bro, they
I am
don't
a melee
understand
warlock.
how much you invest into snapshotting that gargoyle when you have 5,000 haste rating or whatever, and like, dude, I mean, it's like, I know how much this gargoyle does, and it's like that's why I'm never gonna tricks the Death Knight, because the Death Knight themselves doesn't does
Yeah, it gets no
shit
game.
damage.
I love seeing that breakdown too. It's just like your pet actually did more damage. That's freaking nuts.
Yeah, it'll be like your highest damage dealing ability on like so many fights, and you're just like, yeah, that was a good snapshot. You're like, literally, you're looking at it, and you're like, what was the damage that your Gary did? And it's like, that was a good snapshot, which is like interesting now because I did a speed run earlier, and I think Frost is phenomenal.
Yeah,
and Frost kind of gets like, quote unquote, like kind of down talked. Because when you focus on bosses, you have all of your procs going, right? If you're moving quickly as an unholy DK, if you get a proc on the last hit of a trash mob before the boss, you're so tilted. You're like, God damn it. Oh, no. Because your snapshot's going to suck, dude. It is. And like, that's just like a pattern we might see. There's RNG there. You can, like, I have a macro now that like I swap like my trinkets and stuff if I think I'm going to get to the boss in about 30 seconds. So that it can't proc my trinkets. But like there's that RNG involved, and I think it's interesting to see that he thinks that Frost is going to scale so terribly, when I think traditionally on like private servers Frost scales pretty well, right? I mean, if we're looking just boss, Unholy obviously scales pretty fucking sick. Give me more haste, but go about it.
Frost scaling traditionally is interesting. You talk about weapon damage for marksman. It's very similar to Frost. Right now we're using like blood subspec. At a certain point, we will go unholy subspec for a couple of reasons. The main one being Bloodcake's Blade, which is going to scale really well with their weapon damage. Also, at a certain point, we're going to have enough armor pin to not only hit an armor pin soft cap, but eventually hit an armor pin hard cap. And on top of that, in tier 10, the 4-piece set bonus is ridiculously strong, adding even more value to just our strong like Bloodcake Blade, armor pin, like heavy weapon damage build that we're going super late into the game. As to when do we hit that spike, the DK community is still not sure, and we still never were sure on private servers. Typically, it was in tier 9. Typically, you hit a certain point, either you were running with like Mjolnir or a double DC, and you just wanted to go like unholy subspec, and the two subspecs felt the same. But once you go unholy, there really is no looking back. That unholy subspec scales so well with that gear and that weapon damage that they are like taking a nice tick on like the graph of like scaling that we would be looking at. The sad thing about Frost scaling is everyone else is ticking like ridiculous by that point in the game. It's a way bigger tick. And so Frost, despite hitting like some really nice numbers, they're just comparatively a little like still like not where they want to be. So we'll have to wait and see how it goes. But that's typically the track record for Frost.
And a good thing that's brought up.
Blast.
Yeah,
Big damn on trash.
But a good thing that's brought up. What do you think? Like, so traditionally, obviously, on your other realms, and I keep saying this, the fights are very long in Ulduar. But if we look at Classic, no matter what, we kill bosses so fucking fast. I don't care what you said. Bosses would last forever. They buff bosses HP by 30% in Axe. Thanks, right? So like in Ulduar now, obviously they're giving bosses like the original version of how hard they were is the current planning. But also we're getting like an infinitely huge jump in this eye level, like not infinitely, but like pretty significant. So with like full Abyss, are we going to kill bosses pretty fast? Because then Unholy still just like goes nuts, right? It's like, what do you think?
I think Ulduar is definitely going to be a lot different than Nax, but they're also buffing the eye levels too. So I don't know, you know.
My prediction right now is that Ulduar will feel great for the first few weeks. It's going to feel awesome, just like it should.
Like
and
Sunwell.
Then because of the increased eye level, we will scale so much faster earlier. And the fact that like we're the classic community. Like I said at the top of the call, we take this game, we bend it over backwards and stick our finger up its bum. We're going to like burn these bosses, and we're gonna drop healers, and it's gonna be
apparently Thorum has less HP than Patchwork. Imagine us with like so much better gear. That boss is dead. Real? That's gonna be Alano just So
wait, which one was Thorum again? Is that the one with the two hands?
It's one of the keepers, and you like go through a little gauntlet thingy to access him. I think. Is that right?
Okay, I was
Yeah.
thinking of the guy with the 2 hands. You hit his hands and then you hit his head.
We'll like
Oh, yeah,
phase. We'll kill
Kolagon.
everything
You got the
before
big-
it phases. Did the hands one that literally your spread disease, drop your D&D in the middle, affliction lock stand or demo lock stand in the middle, and immolation aura? It's just gonna be like the meters are gonna look hilarious.
The thing I remember about Kolagarn is you got to run back and forth to each of the hands every single time, right? You have to change target. You spend a bunch of time running. If there's any fight where subtlety rogue is gonna be good, it's gonna be that one, because they're gonna shadow step on a 20-second cooldown and have significantly more uptime than the other rogues.
The combat rogue will get to cleave the head at the beginning. But
yeah,
the
you
fight
stand in the
probably
middle.
isn't gonna get
make
you
a
2
shadow
of them.
step blade flurry build. You just like
Oh
21.
shit!
Shadow step isn't the bottom of the subtlety tree.
Not
Okay.
anymore. Yeah. Yeah. That's exciting, actually. All right, let's see what else he has to say.
All right, let's go back.
In very competitive guilds, and then same with warriors. Even if warriors were good at AoE or cleave on 4 or 5 target fights going into bosses, is 4,000 DPS worth it to bring them? Probably not. So if you're playing a melee right now, I'm not sure that's the best choice. Even if this is the extreme and maybe they're a little bit higher, I don't see them doing well in Ulduar. But if you look at the well scaling specs, so marksman, it is now at pretty much the very top. If you're playing a hunter, keep playing a hunter. They're definitely looking good given this information. But if you're playing a feral druid and you're, again, looked at the DPS rankings previous to the Waddle K releasing, they said feral druids were going to be S tier throughout the entire expansion. They're not S tier yet, or I don't know if they will ever be, but they're now middle of the pack instead of being at the bottom of the pack for next rim. Frost DKs, they're middle of the pack. They're scaling very poorly. So they were a little bit higher. Now they're middle of the pack. Fire mages, arcane mages are still at the top. Elementals, shamans are still at the top. The less good scaling warlock specs are now at the middle, with affliction being definitely at the top comparatively. So
how could
that's
elemental
the information I have for the 200 to 213?
Dude, it's because
tier.
everything he has is for some reason the way he did his data.
Scaling of good specs.
He's completely missing the mark on melee. It's just like all melee doesn't scale.
Yeah, melee doesn't scale at all.
Numbers.
Elemental shaman, traditionally known as obviously the best scaling class in the game, right?
Okay, and here,
dude,
let me say
my favorite
something.
meme.
Okay, go ahead.
My favorite meme from TPC was this great one where in the upper left it said elemental shaman scaling in phase 1, and then it went down and there's a red line to the bottom right, and then there's a picture of a toilet, and then it said elemental scaling phase 5. Oh, that one made me happy.
So he says if you're playing this, you should probably swap. Dude, most guilds, the vast majority, are going to take weird compositions, and they're going to take at least 1 or 2, even if the spec is bad. Like, he's talking to like the top 1, the 99%ers. And it's a weird take. I don't know.
I don't think
the mages and the warriors who are in my guild, in my roster right now, should be thankful that they are in it.
That is hilariously, I'm cool with that. That's true. All right, let's be real. All right, whatever. But I think anyone in like the top percentage, right? The 99%ers
characters, right?
You're also not like, you would watch this video if they've seen this video and they're very actively like, that doesn't make sense. I was reading through the comments before we did this call a little bit earlier today, and like I was like, wow, people are really going with like agreeing because of the numbers and the
I know. I was like,
because he broke it down in numbers. And like the thing is, I love the idea behind breaking it down in numbers, and I know you definitely do, right, Simon? Because like numbers are so important, but it's not like it just, this isn't a correct assumption of the numbers. It's not the right way of looking at it. It is
Preach.
It's hard. It's very hard, and I think it feels bad that I think this video will do really well, and we're obviously going over it right now. So like it's obviously gotten to enough people that it's very much in our faces often.
Right.
I think predicting through numbers, especially with eye level scaling, is such a not weird, because I guess you don't really have another good way of predicting, and everything we would ever predict right now is purely going to be like speculation. Not purely, but a lot of speculation. But like it's the jabs. I think it's funny to go off of this, but starting off with just jabs at like anyone. Like I think everyone who did private servers was just an idiot and wrong. Okay, let me show you by the numbers why I'm right. And it's
Well,
like,
and
but wait a second, that's the wrong way of showing it though.
well,
You
and
know?
just heads up to everybody. Eye level was done by Blizzard, like years ago. They were wrong about a bunch of shit. Like that's just all that it boils down to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like what Sarth is saying is totally true. Like having a numerical analysis can give you good results. It can also give you bad results. Just because it's a numerical analysis doesn't mean the result is irrefutable, doesn't mean the result applies to your particular raid. Like Blaze and Bobby, you're saying like he's probably talking to the top 1% here. And yeah, like that kind of analysis just doesn't apply to the average raider, the average like World of Warcraft classic enjoyer, you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
And it's like
like
you got to be careful with your analysis and make sure you're doing it right and accounting for things like Slayer's set, item level 154 that's just like
Yeah.
insanely overpowered.
Yeah, and like, and I'm not
Trinkets.
even like, I'm like in, I parse in the 90s, and my guild does too, right? So, but like, that's not even the majority of the guilds. But my guild's cool with taking way too many paladins. We take way too many, and we take two warriors. Like, it's like it's
Chads.
just
They're in.
yeah, it's just like most people don't adhere to we have to take the perfect comp type of deal, unless it's
Yeah.
like 10 mana achievements and stuff of that nature.
I mean, speedruns are like, we try, like at the top level of speedruns, you try to figure out the exact comp that's going to be like the best kind of. But that is literally less than 1% of the player base, not even, right? And then if you go to a parse raid, it's a similar situation. It's a different composition for a parse raid, but it's focused on killing the boss really fast. Most people and you're not worried about that, right? There are some classes that significantly underperform right now, obviously, but like most people aren't too worried about. A statement of like don't bring them to the raid is always like, that's a rough thing to say. But yes, there's classes that underperform. It's just the prediction of scaling, and like it feels like almost, this is a bad word to say, but it feels this way. It's like the presentation of it was like kind of pompous, right? It was like, take this information, you're welcome, this is how it is, and you're like, yeah.
If I could, go out on a limb and defend the guy
Please
for a
do.
second, I mean, it's not all 100% wrong. Like, at least like some of this is actually valuable, and I do think that some classes can get a somewhat, I wouldn't say accurate, but somewhat like close evaluation as to how they scale. And there are some trends that actually make sense with his charts.
I think
but
warlocks make sense, but that's my like, I don't, maybe I don't know warlocks, but warlocks scale really well. I feel like they're gonna get really fucking good. Fire mages scale really well. Marksman hunters scale really well.
Yeah.
Unholy DK is, if the fights are short, oh yeah, obviously scale really well. Yeah.
Yep. But that's about all I can say.
Yeah, well, and we talked about it before. We just have to see how long the fights take, because you're talking about mages or warlocks. If the fights are longer, they have a longer execute phase. Like, so like there's just all kinds of different factors that go with it. Fights are longer. Like if Unholy loses their like there's a point where that that pet stops performing, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
that's when the longer you go, the worse that unholy decay will do. So I think fight length is going to really be a big indicator, and we have no clue what that's going to be like.
I got to
Yeah.
critique one thing you said. I agree that fight length is a big deal, but like longer fight does mean longer execute phase, but the execute phase should still be roughly the same percentage time
Mhm.
of the
Oh,
fight.
yeah.
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 So
Good point.
like an affliction warlock that pops off during, execute phase because they have all these buffs in execute phase. Like if they get that for 20 seconds out of 100 seconds, that's basically the same as getting it for 40 seconds out of 200 seconds.
Yeah.
The duration of the execute phase is longer, but the percentage impact and thus the impact on your overall DPS for that boss should be roughly the same.
Unless
And
everybody else stops DPSing so the warlock can
Right.
execute. I
Yeah,
like that
unless you have a
idea.
very
Which some might do.
I'm
Yeah.
not gonna
Kidding. I'm
like
kidding.
honestly though, no, the Chinese law it's hilarious and I like they're so innovative, but they will do everything possible to
Mhm.
get the number one parse. So eventually it becomes like impossible even for like say the best players like Alondo. He won't even
Yeah.
be able to beat those because they will have an entire raid literally dedicated so that one person can take all of those 100s, right? And it'll
remember
eventually in the
from-
phases be that way.
From level 60 Naxxramas, I saw a log from China that I thought it was just absolutely amazing. It was a healer parse for Lotheb, and it was a bunch of warlocks in the raid and a priest with Spirit of Redemption. And the priest was intentionally getting themselves killed multiple times to go into Spirit of Redemption, which was unaffected by the Lotheb
So he could heal.
healing limitation, and then resurrecting themselves with Soulstone just so they could crank out the absolute maximum amount of degenerate healing parse on Lotheb.
Oh man,
Get the
my
probably still
wife did
works.
that on accident back in Dax.
That
She
maybe
really
still
did.
works though.
Oh no,
Yeah.
they'll take the parse. Like they'll take the cheese parse.
Crazy. All right, video.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's see.
All right, let's see what else. We're making good time now. We were
Yeah,
doing a
we're
little
almost-
bad before, but now we've juiced a lot of time out of here. We're 11:39 out of the 17:11 video. Let's see what else he's got to say.
Totality of all item levels for the very good scaling specs. So instead of just looking at rogues and how terrible they scale from the 190 to 216, I
Got
did
'em.
the good scaling specs
Bro.
just to give a better representation. And you can see these scalings are fairly linear, except for at the very, very top for Unholy Decays. They're falling off. They don't actually fall off this much. They just don't have a lot of numbers. Obviously, there's not a lot of Unholy Decays that are running around at 215, 216 item level, nor
Yeah, so he points this out where like
For DKs, yes.
damage goes down when item level goes up, and is just kind of like, don't worry about it. But then it's like for the rogues where they have like a big dip, is like it's totally fine. They only scale 9% or whatever. Oh my god.
is that potentially optimal? Maybe they use a different trinket to have a lower item level or something like that. But you can see that once these specs get to the 200 item level, which is epic gear pretty much, they scale very linearly up to the 213. But you can see these four specs that are supposedly scaling best are scaling substantially. And I will go back to my Excel sheet and show this more accurately. So if you don't believe that my original thesis of just using the 200 to 213 item levels was bad, I redid all the math for.
Just to be clear, I don't believe that. But let's see what, and I'm not sure any of us do, but let's go on.
For the 190 to 216 high level bracket, just to show that maybe I was wrong. Maybe 200 to 213 was bad numbers to choose. So this is basically the totality of all the numbers. And again, you can see these are the good specs, these are middle of the pack specs, and these are the terrible specs. And then you can see the differences between those. But as you can see, the percentages are a little bit different. because now you're incorporating going from basically blues to epics, and now you can sort by that, and you can see that actually fire mages are at the top, which should make sense because fire mages need crit, they need a lot of gear. Fire mages and warriors are supposed to scale the best, supposedly, and this shows that more accurately. Whereas marksman was previously our best scaler, but it is now 5th. So potentially these give better numbers, but I'm not 100% sure about that. Combat rogues are completely last, which I've been told combat rogues also scale extremely well. So this information
That's
Bullshit.
true. Combat is lame. I don't like it. So
Bullshit.
you know,
may be a little bit off. Now let's scale it to
Wait, pause it before he
Ulduar
scales it
gear.
anymore. Or is he gonna go further?
I don't know.
If he's
Can
going
we-
further, just let it play.
And this is
Alright.
where I think this information falls a little bit short. It is showing fire mages are second and at an extremely high margin. Unholy
Did he
and
increase the
fire
eye level?
are
What did he
way
do?
ahead of basically
Yeah, he
everything
went to
else.
242.
And I don't necessarily believe this to be true. Even
Between
though
the
this
last
is short,
chart?
whatever, 2.5 minute fights, single target. I don't think these classes are scaling as good as they say. Affliction Warlocks will be good, but given short fights, to bit.
Hang on. I'll show the old chart.
What is this
This
chart? That's the
one?
percent. That's the scaling.
It's sorted
Oh.
by percent
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
And then
Difference.
this
It's
chart
sorted
is
by-
sorted by
DPS at the end.
DPS
I think.
at 242 eye level.
Mm-hmm.
Let me get back to exactly where we were. Roughly.
Affliction
Okay, close
doesn't
enough.
really shine. They usually shine on longer fights or execute fights. I do think arcane mages will be very good. Again, this is more shorter fights, so they will be good. But
Did he
as you
say
see down the line, Ret
the
Paladins are still
length?
terrible, Warriors are still terrible,
2
Feral
minute.
Druids are still terrible. Assassination Rogues aren't completely last like I had in my previous one, but they're middle of the pack, which I believe potentially will be more accurate. They won't be good, they won't be literally shit, they'll be middle of the pack, so maybe this is more accurate. And to get some better visuals on that, here is the graph for the using all the information. So this is eye levels between 190 and 216, and this is the information that you get if you scale that all the way to 242, which may be, again, we don't know the item levels, but Biz Ulduar gear. So again, just visually, warriors, ferals, rets, basically all melee are at the bottom. Casters are at the top. And as you can see, like I said, even if Unholy and Fire are the best, I seriously doubt it's by 1000 DPS. But this should be a generalization of what will happen. So, generally speaking, mages will be at the top, supposedly. Warlocks will still be at the top, supposedly. But interestingly, Marksman on the previous one was almost at the very top. Now it's maybe middle of the pack, upper middle of the pack, but is still worse than Survival, which I don't necessarily think is true, but this is just another example. But my last visualization will be this. So
Okay.
the comparison between the two. So the 262 item level is still the information given between 200 and 213, which I believe is more accurate, and the 239 is the 200 to 213 information, which I believe is more accurate. So it'll be up to you between whether you believe the left graph, which is the 239, or the right graph, which is the 242. But again, some are similar. Melee are at the bottom, casters are at the top. Whether you believe mages will be upper middle of the pack or the top will be more or less up to you to believe. But I believe this should be some good information for you to use to choose what class you want to play versus the very flawed tier lists that people made going into these phases, where they had Feral Druids at S tier for everything.
Yes.
I gotta
Those
do that
is
again.
all.
Yeah, those were flawed,
Those-
but not this.
Yep. Those tier
Apparently,
lists.
I've
Mhm.
gotten like word that he's this content creator individually was very vocal in like the mage discords in TBC.
Uh-huh.
A lot of times spreading very obviously wrong information. He blue parsed as a mage, and he said a lot. Yeah, It is. I like the idea again, right? Like I can't stress like enough. Like I like the idea of looking at like the numbers and breaking it down by current numbers and like giving a generalization. But
Yep.
it just is such a rough way to assume that's how things are gonna go.
And it
Like-
was a really good put together video. You know, I would have changed some of his audio quality, but you know, I'm a podcast guy, so that's what I watch.
I mean, I think it's a good start. He didn't take it like as detailed as it needs to be to get good results from the idea.
So-
I like the idea and the analytical approach, but it needs a little bit more nuance and detail to get good results from that idea, I think.
Yeah.
If we're like, you know, the assholes who give feedback, and if he had to redo this video, I think we would all probably agree, like, baseline, we'd probably get better info if you, this would take a lot of work, if you just simmed it. The sims have all the items in their sims right now, and you can go sim your gear at those eye levels. Granted, like maybe those trinkets maybe aren't exactly scripted right, maybe set bonuses aren't exactly scripted right, but at least that would be a better starting place than this.
And
Yeah.
that's what I thought was interesting. Like, why not do that, right? Like, if you've put in the effort of throwing all of these numbers into like spreadsheets, so you can get the calculations and see like percentage differences and eye level scaling, and then do this, and then create these actually really good looking graphs, right? Why not go into the currently available information and just throw on what our version of the current like Ulduar BIS would be, right? And of course, you could preface that by saying, you know, that like trinkets might not be scripted correctly, they might not have the same proc rates, and also like set bonuses could have different procs and stuff, right? So those are like two large ones, and we also don't know how the item level scaling is going to be exactly influenced. We have like an idea, but this is what the classes are going to look like, instead of going off of like a Nax patchwork situation on eye level purely, when there's a lot of flaws there, obviously, assuming a 1-to-1 like ratio of eye level to DPS. And like when you like rogues, obviously, like we've talked about 1,000 times, right? Like you're using a tier 6, like
and with, you know, say rogues, you know, like I'll just speak to combat rogues, like the librarian paper cutter is way low. It's like item level 200 or whatever, but like it's way lower damage, but it's actually higher damage because of the way the class works and the way you get, you know, more energy, and that actually leads to more damage than your offhand's actually doing. You know what I mean? Like, so there's those types of things.
It's an item that like vastly outperforms its item level.
Yeah. Same with like greatness. Vastly outperforms its eye level. There's so many examples.
For Death Knights, let's go. Give me that strength.
But hey, yo, so he threw shade at my feral S tier like 5 times in this video. You know, I guess I just blackballed the whole community into playing feral, and just
13 seconds left, Rugs. He could throw more feral shade at the end.
So anyways, that one guy Rugs that said feral would be good, fucking idiot. And also, rogues suck. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to like, subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next one.
All right, let me play the last bit of the video.
Levers for melee classes. So yeah, hopefully this information is good. Hopefully you use it. If you have any questions, comments, put them in the comments, and I'll get to them. Thanks.
I just want to say we kind of did meme on this guy a lot, and I feel kind of bad about that. But he put together a great video that got us all talking about this.
Yeah.
He started with a very good idea. We had some critiques. I don't want people to like, obviously we don't want anyone to be like going and harassing this person. We want to welcome this person into the community and try to like engage with them in a positive way. I know that's difficult for a lot of World of Warcraft players, trying to engage with someone you disagree with. But like, I really want to stress this, like, this is such an interesting and controversial video that we all got together just to talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, and talk about like where this idea started, like how this guy interpreted it and how we think maybe this idea could be done, to produce better or more reliable results.
And for
I think
you as like the everyday listener, like we need more people like this who will put in the kind of effort to research the million various different things that need research in our game. And that could be you for your guild helping research like deep dives into logs or whatever type of performance you want to like zoom in on. Go for it. Like we need that in our community.
Mm-hmm.
and
Absolutely.
the premise really the premise really started out really well, and I think if he goes into more of like, instead of we memed on it a little, but the constructive criticism of like the ideas are there now look at it from the different perspectives and make it kind of all encompassing. It's a lot more work obviously, but it'll be more reliable. I think things could be pretty sick if he does it like really well. Like honestly, the video was well put together. It was done well. The information looks really good. It's just obviously misleading from the trained eye. And I think if you spend enough time if he spent enough time taking the time to realize why it was misleading, then he could easily make something that's really well done.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I'm excited we got together to look at this. I mean, this was definitely a controversial video. This is absolutely a controversial video.
As soon as I saw this, I was just like, I have got to get some people, Rugs for sure, to talk about this. Like Rugs.
Yeah, you have to get Rugs into.
Said specifically to Rugs. Like he didn't say his name, but I felt
he said his name. Let's
yeah. he literally was like, that guy, I don't like that Rugs guy.
I enjoyed this conversation. Rugs, I appreciate you're obviously way more familiar with a lot of the Wrath of Lich King content than I am. Your insight into Ulduar. Thumbs up.
Thank you. We just need to like understand the opinions are coming from a certain perspective and to receive it with the massive grain of salt every time, and then we'll be able to read the information that we are being given better.
Yeah. Thank you guys for being here. Thanks Bob for putting this together. This group of beautiful, amazing people.
I got up to 7 hats and then my neck started hurting a bit, so I had to
I was like, how big did that go? Oh my god!
I brought in one extra.
Bob, I saw you had the double going on for a while. I liked that.
This was fun. We should group react to videos more often.
I think so.
It was actually really fun.
I would like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, good stuff. I'm gonna guess go back to World of Warcraft.
We have to actually play the game now. I love you guys.
I'm gonna go eat Chinese and then go to World of Warcraft. So
right on.
All right, Bob, do you want to do any outro or what?
I will go ahead and do the outro on my oh no, I'm gonna need you guys to do your socials. So okay, all right.
Sure. Bob, you want to do yours first or mine first or what?
Just hold on.
Sure.
All right, guys. Well, that's gonna end it out. Where can we find you, Simonize?
You can find me at youtube.com/SimonizeShow or twitch.tv/SimonizeShow. I'm streaming my raids and all kinds of other stuff there. And I have a wonderful Discord server that'll be linked under every single YouTube video with a wealth of knowledge about rogues in Wrath of the Lich King and as close to cutting edge theory crafting as I can bring you.
Awesome. And Rugs, where can we find you?
Yo, I am on YouTube, youtube.com/RUGSZ. I'm on Twitch, twitch.tv/RUGSZ. I pretty much just stream my raid logs and chilling and some random YouTube videos.
Awesome. And Sarth, the man, where can we find you?
Thank you guys for having me. Of course, you can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Sarth, and on YouTube it's Sarth TV because someone has Sarth who's never posted a video. Thank you, guy. But now also the podcast. You guys can find our podcast on Spotify and iTunes for the Classic Life podcast. So that's finally up if anyone's watching this and has wanted to hear or listen to my podcast. So hell yeah.
Awesome. And you can find me on Twitter at blazin_bob. That's BLAZZIN_BOB. You can find me streaming regularly on Twitch, and it's Twitch at blazin_bob, and that's where you can see our show live as well. So we're gonna get out of here, guys.
Excellent. Well, it's been a pleasure, gentlemen.
Yeah, later, guys.
This was good. Love you guys so much.
Seriously.